Welcome to the Culture and People Cast, guys. We have a special guest today, Michelle Kosmacek. Michelle, in a few sentences, would you tell us who you are and what you do?
So hi, welcome, or thanks for inviting me.
Yeah.
My name is Michelle Kosmacek, like you said, and I work in the culture industry, quite frankly. I work in organizational development and diversity and inclusion. Currently, I am the manager of org effectiveness and culture at a company called Waddell and Reed Financial Inc. in Kansas City, Missouri. So there I do all things people, quite frankly. I mean, if you name it, I've probably done it.
Yes. And I know you had your own leadership coaching and other work that you've done on the side. So you've been in this people and culture space for quite a while. So what is your favorite part of this type of work that we do?
I think for me, I think a lot of it is actually tied to kind of the current environment, right? We're in a space where the world is demanding something different from human resources. They're demanding something different from their organizations, from the way that people are able to get involved and, what the way the organizations look. And so I am obsessed with the fact that we get to go back to the drawing board and start everything over. We aren't in a space where it is just what it is, or we just do what we did 30 years ago. The world is kind of demanding that we look at things differently, and I love it. So there's so many parts that I have so much fun in. I'm really enjoying spending time in the diversity and inclusion space and having a lot of personal growth in that space, but also because I think that's one that changes people at the deepest level, where I'm able to really impact and influence, not just for today, not just for this organization, but potentially for the way that they see the world and the way their kids will see the world and the people around them. So there's so many positives right now, and I'm grateful that I'm in this HR culture arena now, because I think 10 years ago, when it was kind of just taken by and nobody was really asking a whole heck of a lot from us, that I would have been in a much different mindset.
Yes, yes. I heard somebody say the other day, I love that people are now saying, why isn't HR at the table instead of why is HR at the table, right? And as I didn't grow up in HR, right? I fell into it, about halfway through my career. And I remember thinking like, we could be such a pivotal part of the business, right? Helping you understand your people and how to leverage them better for business results and navigate big change. So now I feel like 2021 and beyond, like HR and people operations, or however you want to put that, is going to have a different value to organizations.
Yeah. I have spent a good chunk of my career trying to get out of HR because of kind of those outdated frozen mindsets. And I was like, I don't belong in HR, I belong in operations, where I can actually, kind of infiltrate the processes of the organization. And, ultimately that's what a lot of culture is. And that's what organizational development is. It's what D&I is. All of that is about looking at it from a very operationalized standpoint. And so I still am like, operations does make sense, but I'm much happier in HR now that the rest of the world is making these new demands.
Agreed. It's going to be our time now. I'm glad you didn't give up. Okay. So I'm hearing from a lot of leaders, engaging talent is a challenge right now. What are your thoughts?
I don't know that I 100% agree with that engaging challenge or engaging your
Talent. Yeah.
employees, your talent. Thank you. Is all that difficult right now, because I do think people are hungry for a lot more. I think what's complicated and what's challenging about it is that it's not in the same way that it was, right? So the talent and stuff is asking for something more. They're becoming more articulate in what it is that they're demanding. Whereas before, we as the organization kind of said, here's what you can have, right? This is what you want. Now go do what you want to do. And employees aren't necessarily living in that same space anymore. So I think what's complicated about it is that the messages are becoming clearer, but they're contrary to some of the things that we were saying before. And that's not making sense, because it's like, who's right? Is the organization right, or is the employee right? And who gets the most merit and the most credit? And this is why I think it's just like, it's so important in this culture space to like realize that there is never going to be a one size that fits all approach. That not for any company. You cannot take the culture that one company has and like just snugly fit it into your own company. It will always be a matter of nuancing and like managing and changing things and adapting and adjusting. So when we're looking at talent and they're saying, this isn't what I want, and we're saying, but it is what you want. Like, we've decided this for you. There's going to be that disconnect. So much of that challenge I think that leaders are facing is, here's what I've been taught. Here's what I've been told. Here's what I've learned through all these years. And you're telling me it's not right. So me being me, because I just love to rattle cages, I always go to people and I say, if everything you knew was a lie, what would you choose to do? I think we bank too much on what we learned in college and what we read in books and what we see on LinkedIn and Facebook or wherever else you're getting your information. When the reality of it is that if you stop for a minute and say, if nothing I know ever came into play, everything I've ever been taught, if I assume that it's a lie, what choice would I make? And sometimes it's to follow down the same pathways that you've learned in the past, but sometimes it's radically different. And so I just like to have that little pulse check every once in a while. I like to challenge people to think outside of what they know.
No, I love that. And you're a change agent. I love it. You could rattle those cages, and we need people like that. We also need, very steady eddies, right? But those pushers, I love that. And I agree with you, Michelle. I kind of think about 2021 and beyond as it's going to be a talent market. Maybe not right away, maybe not for every organization, but once that talent where work from anywhere is more popular and the companies that maybe cut or are now in growth mode. There's a ton of companies in growth mode. They're going to start taking the talent and it's going to become the employee talent market, right? They're going to have more control than they've had over the past, X number of years. So I'm excited to see how that goes down.
Agreed. And I also would say that I think we're going to very quickly see those who did and those who didn't in the organization space. We're going to have a really big divide in just the businesses that people are gravitating towards and gravitating away. Because one of the things that 2020 taught us is, are you going to go ahead and do what you said you were going to do? Are these values really that important to you? You've been kind of, like pushing them down on us forever. Do you live by them, organization? And am I really truly a priority for you? And I think we'll see a ton of movement coming out when people start to feel a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more stable as COVID starts to hopefully, fingers crossed, go wherever COVID goes, far, far away from me, and we get to leave our homes again. So I do think that we are in a very unique space, and it will be difficult for leaders in those spaces if you're working for companies that did not, or if you as a leader did not show up for your employees in these times.
Oh, I think it's spot on, Michelle. So there's somebody listening, right? Maybe they're a practitioner like you and I, or they're a people leader, or even an employee who say, okay, I want to advance my culture. You've convinced me. We need better people practices. What's some tactical advice that they could start tomorrow or the first of the year, whatever that is?
Yeah. So, I should always warn people before they start taking advice from me. Because I'm a very disruptive soul at the get. Like for me to look at things and to tear them apart and blow them up is my favorite. And, I've had organizations and I've been in places where they have, referred to me as the disruptor and talked about that as being like the villain, right? So if the disruptor is the villain, then what would the superhero look like? And my rebuttal has always been that to me, being the disruptor is the superhero. So when I think about what is it that we need to do and how is it that we start to disrupt culture, is that the reality of what your culture is right now needs to be very, very brutally honest. You really have to understand what your culture is now and where you're able to go and where you can push, because building a culture, it can happen quickly, but it starts very, very slowly. It starts with some really well laid plans. It starts with some really intentional nudges and pushes. And, the biggest thing for all of this, and one of the things that I've had to work really hard with companies to understand, is that failure is like the biggest positive. It's the best thing that you can do. Because regardless of how you're trying to change your culture, whether it's in, we want to become a growth-minded culture, we want to become a recognition-based culture, we want to be a culture of belonging with diversity and inclusion, it is always trial by fire.
Yeah.
It is. You make a decision and you say, I think this is going to work, and you throw it out there and you hope it sticks. And sometimes it comes flying back in your face. And as a practitioner, you have to be very prepared for that. But you also want that. You want those things because that's how you know when you've gone too far and when you haven't gone far enough. I like to tell people when we're having some difficult conversations in the diversity and inclusion space, was like, I really want you to be uncomfortable. Like, that's my preference, is that you're uncomfortable. I don't want panic attacks. Like, if we're creeping up on panic attacks, let me know, because we need to recalibrate. But I do want this to be hard, and I want it to be challenging, and I want you to fail the first time you do it, and then come back and we'll continue to tool it. This isn't a place for perfection. So
Agreed.
Start slow, be very, very thoughtful and very intentional, know what your culture is and where it is that you think you can finesse, and start to plant little tiny seeds around, because those are going to benefit you later on. and then take a lot of risks. Be very smart, not just like foolish risks, right? But take a lot of risks and be really, really brave and very, very vulnerable. And by doing that, you're going to be able to create people who believe in you. And when you are a change agent and you're the one building the culture, you become the face for that organization to those employees. And they have to be able to connect with you as a person. You can't just be, another like face in the field. You can't just be HR. You can't fall underneath any of those things. Your humanity is what pulls people along with you. So I don't know how helpful it is. It's really hard.
It is really hard. And I think that's what there's no short answer that any practitioner can give, right? So I feel like this question is a hard one in many respects, but I feel like you took us where we needed to go. You need to understand as an organization, just like an individual does with their personality, where am I now? What could I do better or differently? Where do I want to be? And then where do I need to push, right? What action do I need to take? Because I define culture as the outcome of our daily habits and behaviors. It's not your vision. It's not your values. It's not your mission. The culture is really how everybody's acting all day. So if you want that philanthropic or caring or innovative culture, then you better be describing and modeling those behaviors for the organization, right?
Yeah, I think another thing, just to throw one more thing out, is that you have to be really thoughtful and intentional about how you're going to manage the paradox. Because especially again, if you're looking at something in the D&I thing, D&I it's not hierarchical, right? It's not like leadership training. There is no hierarchy. It's just humanity. It's just humaning. And you in your organization are going to have people in every spot of that spectrum on every topic all the time. So it's not necessarily pushing forth your agenda. It's helping people to be able to understand why this matters and how it can start to fit into their lives where they're at. So you're going to have the extremists on both sides, the conservatives and the liberal, and not alienating people and being able to understand how to manage that paradox and being able to shift into both spaces. That's going to help you become very successful. So the more that you learn and grow and put yourself into spaces where you are taking two truths, right? Because they are truth to people, regardless of whether or not you agree with them, it's somebody's truth. You have to take these two truths and you have to hold them in your hands at the same level. And one isn't more correct or less correct than the other. And your job as a practitioner is to figure out how to make both of those people feel a part of this invitation to change the culture and to move it forward and to do all those things. So it's complicated, but it is so unbelievably worth it. It's
Agreed.
so much fun. It's
Agreed.
so fun.
Agreed. Oh my gosh, Michelle. Well, we have had such a great conversation. We're going to follow up and we'll put in the show notes anyone that you want to shout out, right, for doing really great work around culture and people in the ring. And we'll also include your favorite resources for advancing your thinking. But I really appreciate not only you being a guest today, just for all you do for people and culture as a whole. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Thanks for having me.
Of course, peace and progress, guys.